Cynthia, from your vantage point of working on related issues over the years, do you see this as a real moment in time? Do you think that this is, as some people have mentioned, an opportunity, be it partly with a new administration in place, a new president, a new generational president, the economic crisis, out of crisis comes opportunity? I mean, do you see this as a moment for really a new agenda?
Well, I mean, we don't want to be too Americanist about this. Not everybody has a new administration. You know, ask any Zimbabwean feminist. I mean, truly. I mean, so.
Yeah, but I mean, look, but the United States is the big elephant in the room.
It's definitely the big elephant in the room. I think you're absolutely right, Isabel. I think here's a worry I have. I have a worry. Now I'm going to talk very locally. So now I'm talking to those of you who really are trying to put your energies into changing American political culture so it's less patriarchal. I'm really afraid that Obama's going to get militarized. I'm very worried about that. Mm-hmm. And I'm very worried about it. It has to do with a feminist, feminist analyses of the American political system. It is very hard for anybody who is elected to the American presidency, I would say in the last 6 presidents. I mean, one has to be quite specific about this. But to avoid, once they have reached the White House, not to put a lot of effort into being taken seriously by the military establishment, for the sake of a presidential success, and not to put a lot of emphasis on trying to be taken seriously by the civilian militarizers who, in fact, run the military. So I'm not just talking about uniformed military people. And I think we are at a moment, and this, I'm so glad you put it that way, Isabel. We are at a moment, and I think it's both a moment of opportunity. I think it's a very dangerous moment. I think it's a very dangerous moment for the Obama administration and for everyone who has worked so hard to put Barack Obama in the office with his whole team. And that danger comes from the ongoing militarization, patriarchal, masculinist militarization in which a lot of American women are complicit because they find it makes them feel secure or makes them feel proud or makes them feel nationalist, otherwise known in this culture as patriotic. I mean, we talk about patriotism as a real danger in this society, but that's a form of nationalism. So we should really use a common language here so that South Korean feminists who are so smart about militarized nationalism realize that we can learn from them because we're talking about militarized, masculinized patriotism. So I think we really are at a dangerous moment here, and I think this is why Afghanistan looms so large now. There hasn't been, I mean, you've probably been reading the papers and the mainstream news. It is very, very hard to hear what Afghan, both in exile and in Afghanistan, feminists are thinking and saying so that we can get smarter about what's going on in Afghanistan. But the Obama administration, I think, is very close to being on the slippery slope. And I think they're greasing their own slope. And that worries me a lot. And I think only if one really has a feminist curiosity about the pressures under which anyone in the American presidency at this stage in the American society's history is the pressures they're under. I think only a feminist analysis can really make clear what kind of pressures those are. And it is the pressures to be taken seriously by the national security establishment. And it is we all, those of us who've lived our lives in the United States and who are currently in the United States and have a stake in it, this is our culture. I mean, this is our political culture. And I think we need to really sit up and act up and really wave some bright, bright neon fuchsia flags and to do something about it, because I think it will derail all the possibilities that are now so fruitful.
Let's open up to the audience and take some questions from you all. Is there a microphone? Okay. I think there are microphones at the front, so maybe you could walk down to the microphone. And if you would just state your name and affiliation, and please do ask a question.
Hi, I'm Joyce Shim. I am a PhD student at Columbia University School of Social Work. So you mentioned that, you mentioned the condition under which women in hunger project, women have to work with their male partners.
That was really loose language when I talked about the male partners. I mean, I did want to emphasize in using it that we are very conscious that when we're working with the women, we also know that they are creatures living in their families. And that's one of the reasons why, for example, whenever we have what we call women's empowerment workshops, we always encourage the men to attend as well. Or when we have the HIV, AIDS and gender equality workshops in Malawi, we have the men attend those as well, because it's really important for us that we don't leave it for the women themselves to have to go home after they have been feeling empowered by what we've told them, and then try and change what their male partners, be their fathers or husbands or sons, whatever, we need to also include them in the discussion. So it was fairly loose language, although we do actually have also, I talked before about the microfinance program. We have a very small microfinance program that we have for men as well, because that's another reason why we want to work with the community as a whole. We're aware already that we're trying to bridge and span centuries-old cultures, so we really don't want to set it up and make that journey even harder by setting up tensions between the men and the women. Often the men are in urban areas anyway. They've had to leave the community because there are absolutely no opportunities, or because they felt that that was the best thing to do to create more resources for the family. And what is encouraging is that the men are returning to our epicenters because they're seeing that there is now opportunity for them to actually earn income being in their own place of where they'd really rather be. And also we have many, many stories on record of men having acquired respect for the women once they see that they really are beginning to earn more money and look after the family and the community in a different way. I'll just tell one small story of the journey we have to go through though. When I was in Ghana, I attended a women's empowerment workshop, and we had almost 50% men and 50% women, and I was asking, what have you learned in the workshop? I'd really like to hear from the men because I'd heard from the women. And one gentleman stood up and put his hand up and he said, well, I've learned that I really need to respect my wife. And I said, well, that's wonderful. Could you tell me what that means? And he said, well, I've learned that we should partner together. So I pushed him a bit further and I said, what does that mean? And he said, well, before I came to these workshops, when we went out into the field, when we were returning, she would carry the baby on her back and the sticks for the fire that evening to cook the meal on her head. And I said, and what happens now? And he said, well, now I carry the baby. So, it's small steps.